The call came at exactly 2:47 p.m., during the quarterly board meeting that would determine the future of Preston Industries. Andrew Preston barely glanced at his phone when it first buzzed against the mahogany table, but when he saw Maria's name flashing across the screen for the third time in 30 seconds, his stomach dropped. Maria Gonzalez had worked for his family for 12 years, first for his late mother, and now managing his household with the kind of quiet efficiency that made her nearly invisible. Until she needed to be seen. She had never, not once in all those years, called him during work hours. "Excuse me, gentlemen," Andrew said, his voice steady despite the ice forming in his chest. He stepped out of the glass-walled conference room, aware of the disapproving stares from board members who didn't appreciate interruptions during million-dollar discussions. His Italian leather shoes clicked against the marble floor as he moved toward the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Seattle. "Maria, this better be—" "Mr. Preston, please." Her voice cracked, and Andrew's prepared reprimand died in his throat. Maria never lost her composure. "Please come home now. She'll destroy her. I don't know what to do anymore. Please. You have to come home right now." The line went dead. Andrew stared at his phone, his reflection ghost-like in the darkened screen. She'll destroy her. The words echoed in his mind as he tried to make sense of them. His daughter, Victoria, was only 7 years old. Who could she possibly destroy, and who could be destroying her? The answer came to him with the force of a freight train. Diane. His wife of 9 years. He was back in the conference room within seconds. "We'll reconvene tomorrow," he announced, gathering his papers with hands that trembled slightly despite his best efforts. "Something's come up at home." Gregory Morrison, the company's CFO and his closest friend, caught his arm. "Andrew, we're voting on the merger today. If you walk out now, then they'll vote without me." Andrew met his friend's eyes, seeing concern there beneath the frustration. "Greg, I have to go. It's Victoria." Understanding dawned on Gregory's face, followed by something that looked like pity. Everyone at Preston Industries knew about Diane's episodes, though no one spoke about them directly. They manifested as unexplained absences at company functions, last-minute cancellations, and Andrew's increasingly dark circles that no amount of expensive coffee could hide. The drive to Bellevue usually took 40 minutes. Andrew made it in 23, his Mercedes weaving through traffic with a desperation that would have earned him a reckless driving ticket if any patrol cars had noticed. His mind raced faster than the speedometer, cataloging every recent interaction with Diane, searching for warning signs he might have missed. She'd been different lately, quieter, more withdrawn. He'd attributed it to the medication changes her psychiatrist had recommended last month. Dr. Reynolds had assured him the new prescription would help with her anxiety and mood swings, but Andrew had noticed Diane flushing pills down the toilet 2 weeks ago. When he'd confronted her, she'd smiled that brittle smile he'd come to dread and said, "I don't need them anymore. I feel wonderful." That should have been his first clue. Diane never felt wonderful. The Preston estate sprawled across 3 acres of manicured lawns and carefully tended gardens that Diane had once loved. Now, as Andrew's car crunched up the circular driveway, those gardens looked almost accusatory in their perfection, a monument to the woman his wife used to be before the darkness crept in. He found Maria standing on the front steps, her normally neat bun coming loose, streaks of tears cutting through her makeup. She was gripping her rosary beads so tightly her knuckles had gone white. "Where are they?" Andrew demanded, already moving past her. "The playroom. Mr. Preston, I tried to stop her, but she locked the door and—" Maria's voice broke entirely. "I heard Victoria crying, and Mrs. Preston was screaming things, terrible things, and I couldn't—" Andrew was already running. The playroom was on the 2nd floor, a converted bedroom that his mother had designed specifically for Victoria. It had princess murals on the walls, shelves overflowing with books and toys, and a window seat where Victoria spent hours reading with the stuffed rabbit she'd named Mr. Humphrey. It was supposed to be her sanctuary. The door was indeed locked. Andrew could hear muffled sounds from inside. Not screaming anymore, but something worse. Singing. Diane was singing a lullaby, the same one his mother used to sing to him. But the melody was wrong, discordant, like a music box winding down. "Diane." He kept his voice calm, controlled, even as his heart hammered against his ribs. "Diane, honey, open the door." The singing stopped. "Go away, Andrew." Her voice was eerily cheerful. "Victoria and I are having a mother-daughter day. Isn't that nice? We should have more mother-daughter days. I've been a terrible mother, but I'm fixing that now. I'm fixing everything. I'd love to join you both. Please open the door." Silence. Then, "She doesn't love me, you know, your precious Victoria. She loves Maria more. She flinches when I try to hug her. Did you know that? My own daughter flinches like I'm going to hit her." The cheerfulness was cracking now, revealing something raw and wounded beneath. "But that's going to change. I'm going to make her understand. I'm going to make her see that I'm her mother. Not that woman. Not Maria." A small voice, barely audible. "Daddy?" Something in Andrew shattered. He threw his shoulder against the door once, twice. The old wood frame splintered on the third impact, and he stumbled into the room, his eyes frantically searching for his daughter. What he saw stopped him cold. The playroom looked like a tornado had torn through it. Books were scattered across the floor, their pages torn out and crumpled. The princess murals had been defaced with black marker, angry slashes across the smiling faces. Victoria's toys had been pulled from their shelves and arranged in strange patterns across the carpet. But it was the corner that seized his attention and wouldn't let go. Victoria sat perfectly still in her window seat, her small body pressed against the wall as if trying to disappear into it. Her favorite yellow dress was soaked, whether with water or something else, Andrew couldn't tell from the doorway. Her dark hair, usually pulled back in neat braids by Maria each morning, hung in tangles around her face. And standing above her, scissors in hand, was Diane. Not the scissors from Victoria's craft box, the large, sharp kitchen shears that Maria used for cutting chicken. Diane had already cut off one of Victoria's braids. It lay on the floor like a dead snake, and she was reaching for the second one. "Diane." Andrew's voice came out strangled. "Put down the scissors." She looked up at him, and for a moment, he didn't recognize the woman he'd married. Her eyes were wild, unfocused, and there was a smile on her face that belonged in nightmares. "I'm just giving her a haircut," she said reasonably. "Mothers do that, don't they? I'm allowed to give my daughter a haircut. Maria's been styling it all wrong anyway. Too fancy, too perfect. Victoria doesn't need to be perfect." The scissors glinted as she gestured with them. "None of us need to be perfect. You're absolutely right," Andrew said, moving slowly into the room, keeping his hands visible and his voice soft. "But maybe we should use different scissors. Those look uncomfortable." "Daddy, please!" Victoria's whisper was barely audible, but it cut through Andrew like a blade. Andrew's mind raced through a dozen scenarios, each one ending in disaster. He'd dealt with Diane's episodes before. The crying jags that lasted for days, the paranoid accusations about neighbors watching her, the week she'd spent convinced that the house was infested with invisible insects. But she'd never been violent. She'd never turned her delusions toward Victoria. "You know what? You're right about the scissors," Diane said suddenly, her mood shifting like clouds racing across a stormy sky. She set the kitchen shears down on the window seat beside Victoria, who remained frozen, her brown eyes locked on her father with an expression that would haunt him for the rest of his life. "I should use proper hair scissors, the ones from my bathroom. They're much sharper. I'll be right back, sweetheart." She brushed past Andrew as if he were a piece of furniture, humming that distorted lullaby again. The moment she disappeared into the hallway, Andrew lunged forward, scooping Victoria into his arms. She was shaking. No, vibrating, her entire small body racked with silent tremors. "I've got you," he whispered into her hair, what was left of it. "I've got you, baby girl. You're safe now." "She said I was becoming a stranger," Victoria whispered against his neck, her breath hot and rapid. "She said Maria was stealing me away, turning me against her. She said she had to fix me before it was too late, before I became just like," her voice broke, "just like Grandma." Andrew's blood turned to ice. His mother had died 3 years ago, and Diane had been inconsolable at the funeral, not with grief, but with rage. She'd stood at the graveside and laughed, a sound so unsettling that several mourners had left early. Later, she'd confessed to her therapist that she'd been relieved. She always thought I wasn't good enough for Andrew, Diane had said. Now she's finally gone, and she can't judge me anymore, except Andrew's mother had never judged Diane. She'd loved her, tried desperately to help her, recommended doctors and support groups and meditation retreats. But in Diane's fractured reality, love and criticism had become impossible to distinguish. "Maria!" Andrew called out, moving toward the destroyed doorway with Victoria still clinging to him. "Maria, call Dr. Reynolds. Now. And then call 911. Maria appeared at the top of the stairs, her face stricken. "Is she?" "She's fine. We're fine. Just make the calls." But they weren't fine. Victoria's trembling hadn't stopped, and when Andrew tried to set her down, her fingers dug into his shirt with desperate strength. "Don't leave me with her," she begged. "Please, Daddy. Don't ever leave me alone with her again." The words were a knife between his ribs. How many times had he left Victoria alone with Diane? How many business trips, late meetings, weekend golf games? He'd trusted Maria to be there, to supervise, to protect. But Maria wasn't family. Maria couldn't tell a mother she wasn't allowed near her own daughter. Footsteps echoed from the master bedroom. Diane was coming back. Andrew made a split-second decision. He carried Victoria down the stairs, through the marble-floored foyer with its crystal chandelier that Diane had chosen on their honeymoon in Venice, past the living room where they'd hosted Christmas parties and birthday celebrations that now felt like scenes from someone else's life. He didn't stop until they were outside, the afternoon sun warm on his face, the smell of cut grass and roses filling his lungs. He set Victoria down gently on the front steps, kneeling so they were eye level. "Listen to me very carefully," he said, gripping her small shoulders. "I need you to stay right here with Maria. Don't go back inside no matter what you hear. Can you do that for me?" Victoria nodded, but her eyes were dark with fear. "Where are you going?" "I have to talk to Mommy." "She's not Mommy anymore," Victoria said flatly. "Not really. She looks like Mommy, but something's wrong inside her. It's been wrong for a long time." The observation was too mature for a 7-year-old, too knowing. Andrew realized with a sick feeling that Victoria had been watching Diane deteriorate, cataloging the changes, living with a fear she'd never voiced, because children were supposed to love their mothers unconditionally. Maria emerged from the house, her phone pressed to her ear. "Dr. Reynolds is on his way," she said quietly. "The police are coming too, but I didn't tell them. I just said there was a medical emergency." Andrew nodded gratefully. The last thing they needed was squad cars with sirens blaring, turning their crisis into neighborhood gossip. He started back toward the house, then paused. "Maria, about what Diane said." "She's sick, Mr. Preston." Maria's voice was firm, despite the tears streaming down her face. "Sick people say things they don't mean. I know Victoria loves her mother, and I know Mrs. Diane loves Victoria, even if she can't show it right now." But Andrew wasn't sure that was true anymore. He'd seen Diane's eyes when she stood over their daughter with those scissors. There had been something cold there, calculating, not the eyes of a mother having a breakdown. The eyes of someone who'd made a decision and was following through. He found Diane in Victoria's playroom, sitting cross-legged on the floor amid the destruction, the hair scissors from her bathroom clutched in one hand. She was crying now, great heaving sobs that shook her whole body. "She's gone, isn't she?" Diane asked without looking up. "You took her away from me. You scared her, Di. You scared all of us. I just wanted to be a good mother." Her voice was small, broken. "That's all I've ever wanted, but I can't do it. There's something broken inside me, Andrew. Something that's been broken since I was a child. And I thought having Victoria would fix it. That loving her would be enough. But it's not. It's never enough." Andrew sat down across from her, keeping a careful distance. "Then we get you help. Real help. Not just pills and therapy sessions. There are facilities where they lock you up and throw away the key." Diane laughed bitterly. "I'm not stupid, Andrew. I know what inpatient treatment means. I know what happens to women like me. Women like you get better. They learn to manage their illness. They come home to their families. Do they?" Diane finally looked at him, and her eyes were clearer now, more focused. "Or do their husbands leave them? Do their children grow up afraid of them?" Do they become cautionary tales whispered about at PTA meetings? Andrew had no answer for that because he didn't know. He'd been Googling her symptoms late at night for months now. Bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder, postpartum psychosis that had never quite resolved. The internet offered plenty of clinical descriptions, but no roadmap for what came next. "I love you," he said finally, and was surprised to find he meant it. Somewhere beneath the chaos and fear, he still loved the woman he'd married. The one who'd laughed at his terrible jokes and cried during insurance commercials and planted a garden full of Victoria's favorite flowers. "But you love her more," Diane said softly, "as you should. She's your daughter. She's innocent and perfect and everything I'm not." She looked down at the scissors in her hand, as if seeing them for the first time. "I wouldn't have hurt her, you know. I needed her to see me, really see me, to understand that I'm her mother, that I'm important, that I matter." "You do matter. Then why does she flinch when I touch her?" The question hung in the air between them, unanswerable and damning. Because somewhere in the last few years, Diane had stopped being a mother and become something else, a source of anxiety, unpredictability, fear. And Victoria, young as she was, had learned to protect herself the only way she knew how: by pulling away. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Dr. Reynolds arrived before the ambulance, his silver BMW skidding slightly on the gravel driveway. He was a thin man in his early 60s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and he'd been Diane's psychiatrist for the past 4 years. Andrew had always appreciated his calm demeanor, the way he never seemed rattled no matter what Diane's latest crisis entailed. But today, when Dr. Reynolds entered the playroom and saw Diane sitting amid the wreckage, scissors still in hand, something flickered across his face, concern mixed with resignation, as if he'd been expecting this call for months. "Diane," he said gently, settling onto the floor a few feet away from her. "I'm glad you're safe. Can you tell me what happened today?" "I cut my daughter's hair," Diane said simply. "Mothers do that." "They do," Dr. Reynolds agreed. "But Andrew tells me Victoria seemed frightened. Do you remember why?" Diane's face crumpled. "Because I'm a monster. Because I can't control what's happening in my head anymore. The thoughts come so fast, doctor, like a radio stuck between stations, static and voices and music all at once. I can't turn it off." "Have you been taking your medication?" The pause was answer enough. Dr. Reynolds sighed deeply, the sound of a man who'd fought this battle too many times before. "How long?" 6 weeks. Maybe 7. Diane twisted the scissors in her hands, watching the light catch the blades. "They made me feel numb, like I was watching my life through dirty glass. I thought I could manage without them. I thought I was getting better. Diane, we've discussed this. You have a chemical imbalance. It's not something you can will away or manage through positive thinking. It's like a diabetic stopping insulin. Then maybe I'm not supposed to be fixed," Diane said, her voice rising. "Maybe this is just who I am, broken and wrong and toxic to everyone around me. Maybe Victoria would be better off if—" "Stop." Andrew's voice cut through the room like a whip. "Don't you dare finish that sentence." But the damage was done. The thought had been voiced, given shape and weight. Diane had thought about leaving, permanently, and from the lack of surprise on Dr. Reynolds's face, this wasn't the first time she'd expressed such ideas. The ambulance arrived with no sirens, just flashing lights that painted the walls in rotating shades of red and blue. 2 paramedics entered with a stretcher, and kind smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes. They'd done this before too, Andrew realized. They'd collected broken people from beautiful houses and transported them to places where the walls were padded and the windows didn't open. "I don't want to go," Diane said suddenly, panic creeping into her voice. "Andrew, please, don't make me go. I'll take the pills. I'll do better. I'll be better." "I know you will," Andrew said, and he was crying now, hot tears he couldn't control. "But you need help to get there, real help, the kind I can't give you." Dr. Reynolds was explaining something about a 72-hour hold, voluntary versus involuntary commitment, treatment plans, and family therapy. Andrew heard the words but couldn't make them form coherent meaning. All he could focus on was Diane's face as the paramedics helped her onto the stretcher. The way she looked at him with such betrayal, such hurt, as if he were the one who'd broken their family apart. "Take care of her," Diane whispered as they wheeled her toward the door. "Promise me you'll take care of our little girl." "I promise." And then she was gone, loaded into the ambulance that pulled away with the same eerie silence it had arrived with, taking his wife to a psychiatric facility 30 miles away where she'd be evaluated, medicated, and kept away from sharp objects. Andrew stood in the driveway long after the ambulance disappeared, his mind blank and buzzing simultaneously. He didn't move until he felt a small hand slip into his. "Is Mommy coming back?" Victoria asked. "Eventually, when she's feeling better." "What if she doesn't get better?" Andrew knelt down, looking into his daughter's face, really looking, perhaps for the first time in months. She seemed older somehow, as if the events of the afternoon had aged her beyond her 7 years. There were dark circles under her eyes that he'd never noticed before. How long had she been carrying this fear? "Then we'll figure it out together," he said. "You and me. No matter what happens, you're safe. I'm going to make sure you're always safe." Victoria nodded slowly, then wrapped her arms around his neck. "I miss the old mommy," she whispered. "The one who used to read me stories and make funny voices for all the characters. Do you think she's still in there somewhere?" "I hope so, baby. I really hope so." Maria appeared in the doorway, her face composed now, the professional mask back in place. "Mr. Preston, I've prepared dinner, and I think Victoria might need a bath and some rest." "Thank you, Maria." Andrew stood, lifting Victoria into his arms, even though she was getting too big to be carried. "Actually, could you do me a favor? Could you take a few days off? Paid, of course. I think Victoria and I need some time together." Surprise flashed across Maria's face, followed by understanding. "Of course. But if you need anything, I'll call. I promise." After Maria left, Andrew carried Victoria upstairs to the bathroom, where he ran a warm bath with her favorite bubble solution, the one that smelled like strawberries and turned the water pink. He sat on the closed toilet lid while she played with her toy boats, neither of them speaking, just existing in the same space. It was Victoria who finally broke the silence. "Daddy, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Why didn't you notice that Mommy was getting worse?" The question was a punch to the gut. Because she was right. He hadn't noticed, or hadn't wanted to notice. He'd been so consumed with work, with the merger, with maintaining the perfect image of the successful CEO with the beautiful family and the mansion in Bellevue. He'd seen the signs, the pills in the toilet, Diane's mood swings, the way Victoria had started spending more and more time with Maria, but he'd convinced himself it was manageable. That if he just worked hard enough, made enough money, provided enough stability, everything would somehow balance out. "Because I was scared," he admitted. "And when people are scared, sometimes they pretend everything's fine until it can't be ignored anymore. That was wrong of me. I should have protected you better." Victoria considered this, swirling the pink water with her hand. "Mrs. Chen at school says her mommy has depression. She takes medicine for it and sees a doctor. And Mrs. Chen says it's okay to talk about it, that it's like having diabetes or asthma or any other sickness." Mrs. Chen is right. "So Mommy's not bad. She's just sick." "Exactly." But even as Andrew said it, he wondered if it was that simple. Illness explained the chemical imbalance, the mood swings, the paranoia. But did it explain the coldness he'd seen in Diane's eyes today? The calculation? Or was that something else? Something darker that had nothing to do with neurotransmitters and everything to do with a fundamental break in the person his wife used to be? His phone buzzed. A text from Gregory. "Board voted on the merger. Passed 7-2. Your absence noted. We need to talk." Andrew deleted the message without responding. For the first time in his adult life, Preston Industries felt completely irrelevant. That night, after Victoria fell asleep in his bed, she'd refused to stay in her own room, and Andrew couldn't blame her. He walked through the house, really seeing it for the first time in years. This mansion that Diane had decorated so carefully, choosing every paint color and light fixture and piece of furniture. Had she been happy here, or had this beautiful cage been part of what broke her? He ended up in her art studio, a converted sunroom at the back of the house that overlooked the gardens. Diane had been a painter when they met. Talented, passionate, with gallery shows and critical acclaim. But marriage and motherhood had consumed those hours, and the studio had gradually filled with dust and abandoned canvases. Andrew flipped through the stacked paintings, and his breath caught. They were all of Victoria, dozens of portraits painted over the years, charting her growth from infant to toddler to the little girl she was now. But there was something wrong with them. In every painting, Victoria's eyes were blank, not captured mid-blink, but deliberately painted as empty white ovals, like a doll's eyes. And in the corner of each canvas, barely visible, Diane had written the same phrase over and over. "She doesn't see me." 3 months passed like a strange dream. Diane remained at Willowbrook Psychiatric Hospital, where Dr. Reynolds and his team worked to find the right combination of medications to stabilize her. Andrew visited twice a week, sitting in the sterile common room, while his wife talked about group therapy sessions and art projects and the breakthrough she'd had about her childhood trauma. She seemed better, calmer, more present, but there was a flatness to her now that frightened him more than the chaos had. Victoria refused to visit. Andrew didn't push. Preston Industries survived the merger. Though Andrew's reputation took a hit, whispers circulated through the executive floors about his family situation, the polite corporate euphemism for scandal. 2 board members suggested he take a leave of absence to focus on personal matters, which really meant they wanted him gone before his wife's breakdown became public knowledge and affected stock prices. Gregory was the only one who stood by him. "They're vultures," he'd said over whiskey one night in Andrew's study. "Let them circle. You built this company from nothing after your father died. They'll remember that when the gossip dies down." But Andrew found he didn't care as much as he should. His entire value system had shifted that afternoon when he'd broken down Victoria's door. The quarterly reports and market projections that once consumed his every waking thought now seemed abstract, meaningless. What good was building an empire if you lost your family in the process? He'd hired a different kind of help after Maria, a child psychologist named Dr. Patricia Moore, who came to the house 3 times a week to work with Victoria. She was a warm woman in her 50s with gray hair and laugh lines, and she had a gift for making therapy feel like play. Under her guidance, Victoria slowly began to process what had happened. "She's remarkably resilient," Dr. Moore told Andrew after one session. "But she's also dealing with complicated grief. She's mourning the mother she thought she had while simultaneously feeling guilty for being afraid of her. That's a heavy burden for a 7-year-old. Will she be okay? Eventually. Children are adaptable, but she'll need consistency, stability, and most importantly, she'll need you to be present. Not just physically in the house, but emotionally available." Andrew took that advice to heart. He started leaving work at 5 o'clock sharp, ignoring the raised eyebrows from colleagues who'd grown accustomed to his 12-hour days. He learned to braid Victoria's hair by watching YouTube tutorials, though his attempts were clumsy compared to Maria's expert work. He cooked dinners that were often burned or under-seasoned, read bedtime stories with different voices for each character, and sat through endless episodes of Victoria's favorite cartoons without checking his phone once. They developed new routines, new rhythms. Saturday mornings were for pancakes and the farmer's market, Sunday afternoons for the zoo or the children's museum, weeknight evenings for homework, help, and board games. Slowly, Victoria's nightmares decreased. Her laughter returned. She stopped flinching at sudden movements. But she still asked about Diane. "When is Mommy coming home?" Andrew never knew how to answer that question. The decision came on a rainy October afternoon when Dr. Reynolds called him into his office at Willowbrook. Diane was there too, sitting in a chair by the window, watching the rain streak down the glass. She looked healthier than she had in years. Her hair was styled, her clothes clean and pressed, her eyes clear and focused. "We've made significant progress," Dr. Reynolds began. "Diane has been compliant with her medication regimen. She's engaged meaningfully in therapy, and she's demonstrated genuine insight into her condition. I believe she's ready for supervised home visits." Andrew's heart clenched. Supervised? Initially, yes. Short visits, a few hours at a time, with you or another trusted adult present. If those go well, we can gradually increase the duration and frequency. He looked at Diane, trying to read her expression. "How do you feel about that?" "Terrified," she admitted. What if I relapse? What if I say or do something that scares Victoria again? What if I'm never able to be the mother she deserves? Those are valid fears, Dr. Reynolds said. But they're also signs of health. The Diane who was brought here 3 months ago didn't have that level of self-awareness. She didn't understand how her actions affected others. You've done the hard work of facing your illness, accepting it, learning to manage it. That takes courage. I've been painting again, Diane said softly, turning to Andrew. Dr. Reynolds suggested art therapy, and I've been working through a lot of things. Would you like to see? She led him to her room, a small, sparse space with a narrow bed and a desk. The walls were covered with paintings, but these were different from the disturbing portraits in her studio at home. These showed Victoria playing in the garden, reading books, laughing with Maria. And in every single painting, Victoria's eyes were fully rendered, bright, alive, seeing. I understand now, Diane said. It wasn't that Victoria didn't see me. It was that I couldn't see her. I was so consumed by my own pain, my own need to be loved and validated, that I turned my daughter into a mirror. When she didn't reflect back what I needed, I thought she was rejecting me. But she was just being herself, a little girl who needed a mother, not someone who needed to be her mother's therapist. Andrew felt tears burning his eyes. I'm not asking for forgiveness, she continued. I don't deserve it, not yet. Maybe not ever. But I am asking for a chance, one supervised visit, 1 hour with Victoria where I can apologize to her properly. Not as a sick person making excuses, but as her mother taking responsibility. She deserves that much. The visit was scheduled for the following Saturday. Andrew prepared Victoria carefully, explaining that Mommy was feeling much better and wanted to see her, but that Daddy would be right there the entire time, and they could stop whenever Victoria wanted. Will she have scissors? Victoria asked. No, sweetheart, no scissors. Diane arrived at noon, driven by a Willowbrook staff member who would wait in the car. She stood on the front steps of the house she'd once called home, looking smaller somehow, diminished. When Victoria appeared in the doorway, both of them froze. Hi, baby, Diane said, her voice wavering. Hi, Mommy. They moved to the living room, sitting on opposite ends of the couch with Andrew in a chair nearby. For several minutes, no one spoke. Then Diane reached into her bag and pulled out a small wrapped package. I made this for you, she said. In art therapy. Victoria unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a small painting, no bigger than a book, a portrait of mother and daughter holding hands in a garden full of flowers. Both figures were smiling, and both had eyes that sparkled with life. It's how I want us to be, Diane explained. Someday, if you'll let me try. Victoria studied the painting for a long moment. It's beautiful, she said finally. Can you teach me to paint like that? I'd love to. They talked for an hour, tentatively at first, then with growing ease. Diane asked about school, about Victoria's favorite books, about the new hamster Andrew had let her adopt from the pet store. She didn't try to hug Victoria or touch her. She didn't make promises she couldn't keep. She just listened, really listened, in a way she perhaps never had before. When the Willowbrook driver knocked on the door to signal it was time to leave, Victoria did something Andrew hadn't expected. She stood up, walked over to Diane and said, Will you come back next week? If you want me to. I do. And Mommy? Victoria paused. I'm sorry I made you feel invisible. Diane's face crumpled. Oh, sweetheart, no. You didn't make me feel anything. That was my sickness, not you. Never you. You are perfect exactly as you are. They hugged then, brief and awkward, but genuine. And when Diane left, Andrew saw something in her eyes he hadn't seen in years. Hope. The supervised visits continued weekly, then twice weekly. Diane attended Victoria's school play, sitting in the back row and crying quietly through the entire performance. She came to birthday parties and Sunday dinners, always leaving before her allotted time was up, never pushing for more than Victoria was ready to give. 6 months after that first visit, Dr. Reynolds declared Diane stable enough for unsupervised day visits. 9 months in, she moved into a small apartment near the hospital. Not home, but close enough to be part of their lives. Andrew and Diane never discussed reconciliation. Their marriage had been built on a foundation that couldn't support the weight of her illness and his neglect. They both understood that some things, once broken, couldn't be fully repaired, only rebuilt into something different. But they were learning to be partners in parenthood, if not in life. They attended Victoria's school conferences together, split holidays amicably, and communicated openly about Diane's treatment plan. Diane never missed a medication dose. She kept every therapy appointment. She built a life that was smaller than before, but more authentic, teaching art classes at a community center, volunteering at an animal shelter, slowly reconstructing an identity separate from wife and mother. Victoria thrived. She made friends, excelled in school, and developed a love of painting under Diane's careful tutelage. The nightmares stopped entirely. The flinching became a memory. She learned that it was possible to love someone while maintaining boundaries, to forgive without forgetting, to be both compassionate and self-protective. 2 years after that terrible afternoon, Andrew received an unexpected package at his office. Inside was a painting, the one of Victoria with the blank eyes, the one that had haunted him from Diane's studio, but Diane had painted over it, transforming it completely. Now Victoria's eyes were bright and full of joy, gazing not at the viewer, but at something beautiful beyond the frame. On the back, in Diane's familiar handwriting, "Thank you for breaking down the door. Thank you for saving us both. She sees me now, and I finally see her. D." Andrew hung the painting in his office, where it remained for the rest of his career, a reminder that some disasters could be survived, that families could be broken and rebuilt in new configurations, that the courage to ask for help was sometimes the greatest strength of all. That evening, he picked Victoria up from her art class at Diane's apartment. Mother and daughter were laughing together over a paint-splattered canvas, their hands moving in synchronization as they added final touches to a garden scene. "Daddy, look," Victoria called. "Mommy taught me how to do shadows." Andrew looked at his daughter's glowing face, at his ex-wife's genuine smile, at the peaceful domesticity of the scene. It wasn't the family he'd imagined building all those years ago. It wasn't perfect or traditional or anything the board members at Preston Industries would consider aspirational. But it was real. It was healthy. And most importantly, it was whole. "It's beautiful," he said. "You're both beautiful." And in that moment, standing in the doorway of Diane's modest apartment with the smell of paint and possibility in the air, Andrew Preston understood that sometimes the greatest love is knowing when to let go, when to rebuild, and when to celebrate the imperfect miracle of healing. Victoria placed the finished painting in his hands. A garden in full bloom, mother and daughter working side by side among the flowers, both of them finally, truly seeing each other. "This one's for you, Daddy," Victoria said. "So you never forget that broken things can grow into something new." Andrew held the painting to his chest, his throat tight with emotion. "I won't forget," he promised. "I won't ever forget." Outside, the Seattle rain had stopped, and the sun was breaking through the clouds, painting everything in shades of gold.